This is something that those of us in the podcast business like to call a cold open. You wouldn't know anything about this unless you're myself, CMAS and Morty. And I do want to apologize. Ben Tennant, former Super Bowl champion, king of the outs himself, brought it to my attention this morning that I've been using the wrong contract data this whole time. Instead of looking at how many actual years and what the actual cap hit is remaining on the contract for each player, I've been just including the overall contract data, like from when it was first signed. And that's not particularly helpful because it doesn't show us what all the expiring contracts are. It doesn't show us like what their actual cap hit is, etc. So I do apologize for that. Unfortunately, I don't have time to I don't have time today to re-record the Baltimore Ravens preview. So this preview, along with, of course, the Falcons and Cardinals previews from yesterday for me, have the wrong contract data in them. But moving forward, starting with the Buffalo Bills one, which I will re-record, and then moving forward, we will have all of the right contract data out there. So once again, I apologize for that. This is the last preview. Well, that will impact things. Thank you, Ben, once again for bringing this to my attention. And I'll see you on the other side. Enjoy the video. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the third team preview of this Madden 21 Better League team preview series, that of the Baltimore Ravens. I am your host, Connor Rice, and I'm especially excited to get going with this one because this is a team that's in my division. This is a team that, I'm going to be facing off twice a year. It was really interesting for me to look at their roster, their strengths and weaknesses, etc. And then second, I think everyone's a little unsure about what the pecking order of the division is going to be. Other than, of course, Cody's Cincinnati Bengals are the clear front runner to take first place most, if not every season there is. I do think, myself, Jesse, and Lucky Chew, I do think we could very easily fall into like any order of 2, 3, 4, based on the season, based on our schedules, etc. I honestly think we're all around the same quality user. Maybe Jesse's shown slightly more potential in this past cycle in Madden 20, but honestly, we can all beat each other on any given day. I think the two of them, I think Jesse and Lucky Chew would say that as well. So because of that, I'm really excited to take a look at this team because this is a team that I will be fighting with, hopefully for wildcard berths, and then of course 2 times a season I'll be facing them on the gridiron. We begin as always with the quarterback room, and my God, y'all, we begin with what not only is obviously the single most lethal weapon on this Baltimore Ravens team, this might be like the single cheesiest player in the Better League heading into Madden 21. Lamar Jackson, 94 overall, but that's not what matters. You look at the speed, you look at the acceleration, you look at the still very decent accuracy stats, and the 92 throw power. I mean, he is, even if you don't want to scramble with him every play, just like in real life, he is a very balanced, truly elite quarterback in all capacities. Of course, I'm not going to talk about all of the abilities, but he has the trust X factor, where he, once that's activated, he will never fumble no matter how hard the hits are. He has escape artist. He's going to have that every play where he's able to roll out quicker and quicker. He has the quick draw, fast break, tight out. I mean, that is a series of 5 abilities right there that really strike fear into the hearts of every defense in the AFC, especially in my defense, into the Cleveland Browns. I am shook. I'm going to need to figure out how to contain Lamar Jackson. Fortunately, from Lucky Chew's perspective, he still has Lamar Jackson on a cheap contract for 4 more seasons. So that is, cheap, truly elite quarterback play for the majority of the cycle. As far as the backups go, RG3 is perfectly competent. He's got decent speed. He's able to, he doesn't have the escape artist ability, but I don't think that's going to impact him, or I don't think it's going to impact like non-escape artist quarterbacks quite as much as it did in Madden 20. I mean, having played with like Matt Ryan, who is less mobile than Robert Griffin III in the Madden 21 beta, I was still able to, roll out with him decently, maneuver the pocket however I wanted. So RG3, I don't think is going to have many issues there. Obviously, his accuracy stats are kind of pedestrian, so you're going to have to go more West Coast if that ends up being the option. And then Tyler Huntley, I just have on here. I do think the Ravens will carry 3 quarterbacks into the season, and I do think Tyler Huntley will be quarterback 3 in this team. But again, if Tyler Huntley takes the field at any point, something's gone horribly wrong in Baltimore. So, hopefully for his sake, we see as much of Lamar as possible. As far as the running game goes, this is an interesting one. I obviously have this ordered by overall, but I would almost just start J.K. Dobbins and just try to dev him as much as possible. And I say this for a few reasons. Mark Ingram, surprisingly, well, I don't even know why I'm saying surprisingly, he's a very balanced running back, just like we saw with Todd Gurley yesterday with that preview. He's got decent like shiftiness, very good power. You can see he's tied for 4th in trucking. Not the best speed, obviously, high 80s isn't what you want there, but if you're desperate, you can go with an 88 speed running back. I mean, he is very solid in all other categories, as you can see, but I mean, being tied for 4th in trucking and tied for 5th in juking, that kind of shows you how balanced of a running back Mark Ingram is. But with all that being said, I don't even think I'd start Mark Ingram. I think I'd just start J.K. Dobbins because he has very solid stats across the board. You look at his full assortment of attributes there. He's got a very strong basis to go off of. I really need to mute my phone before I start doing these. This happened yesterday. Being only 21 years old, being again on that rookie scale for 4 more seasons, I think it's going to be very easy to develop, especially since he already has, very solid physical stats with the 91 speed, 90 acceleration. That's something you can absolutely work with. So if I were Lucky Chew, I would just dev J.K. Dobbins and then probably have Mark Ingram as my backup. Gus Edwards is an expiring contract. I would not re-sign him heading into the first offseason, although he does have the highest carrying of anyone. So, if you have Nick Chubb in the playoffs-itis, maybe Gus Edwards can be the answer there because he does have high carrying. As far as the wide receiving core goes, this is a very interesting one. Of course, as you can see, in terms of like who I compared to the rest of the league, Mark Andrews is the highest overall player here, and I think Mark Andrews is going to be a truly elite tight end for honestly the rest of the cycle, given the fact that he's only 23 years old. Still on a cheap contract, still with 4 years remaining on his contract, being paid less than $1 million a year. That's honestly pretty criminal. He has some of the best route running among any tight end. He is very much a matchup problem for most linebackers, honestly. 80 speed, 90 excel. He's just solid in all categories, man. I mean, he truly one of the best young tight ends in the league. Mark Andrews, he will be, again, a matchup problem for any defense to have to contain. As far as the wide receiving core goes, it's not like other than Marquise Brown, it's honestly not like, it doesn't jump off the page necessarily, but he has youth and he can dev Miles Boykin and Devin Duvernay. I think that's the most important thing. They're only 23 and 22 respectively. Again, very decent physical stats, so you don't have to worry about that. So you can just, bump their route running up, bump their catching up. I think in a couple years, I think they could be very solid, wide receiver 2 quality wide receivers. I'm saying wide receiver over and over. That's a tongue twister. But yeah, I think Miles Boykin and Devin Duvernay, despite the fact that they're definitely, sorry about that. They're definitely receivers that you have to develop, but I do think they can be very solid moving forward. And then, of course, I'm burying the lead here. Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, is an absolute burner. Not quite on that Tyreek Hill level, but he is in that second tier of just elite burners at that wide receiver position. 97 speed, 94 acceleration. I don't think I have a cornerback that can contain him. I would love to see, obviously we'll get into what the rest of the division has, but Marquise Brown, a very, very solid young wide receiver. Again, only 23 years old, 4 years remaining on their contract as well. Decent route running stats too. So, you don't, like, if he ends up wanting to develop Marquise Brown into like a god, then he certainly can. But honestly, like right out the gate, heading into season 1, Marquise Brown, a very, very solid first wide receiver option for this Baltimore Ravens team. They both have depth and star power with Marquise Brown, so that's a very good place to build off of if you're Baltimore. Here's the projected starting O-line. Obviously, Ronnie Stanley is the headliner here. Still pretty young. Again, only 26. This offense really has a lot of elite young pieces that they can continue to use for the vast majority of the cycle, if not the whole thing. This is the first offensive lineman we've talked about with an ability, he has that lifeguard ability. And I mean, just look at his like overall blocking stats. I mean, he is, if he's not outright the best left tackle in the league, he is absolutely in that top 3. The single best run blocker in terms of just the pure, run blocking stat. He's versatile in both power and finesse options. You can see, with the run block power and pass block power and finesse, he is top 5 in every single category as far as the power and finesse goes. So you don't have to game plan what type of runs you bring out there, what type of reads you bring out there around Ronnie Stanley, because Stanley can handle it all. He can do whatever you ask him to, whether it's a power look or a more finesse off tackle look as far as the running game goes. In terms of the rest of the offensive line, obviously, like, the tackle play is very solid in general. I think Orlando Brown is definitely someone you want to hold on to, and keep developing for as long as possible. Very solid in all categories. The interior offensive line is a bit of a problem. Of course, you have 2 expiring contracts in Matt Skora and DJ Fluker. They're both getting up there in age, although if you really want to re-sign Matt Skora, you can. We'll get onto that later when we talk about the expiring contracts. But the interior of the offensive line is not great. I'd rather have this situation than the other way around. I'd rather have, elite tackle play and a mediocre to below average interior offensive line than the other way around. But with that being said, it's absolutely something that Baltimore's going to have to game plan for. You can't necessarily do a bunch of those inside zones and expect to run between the tackles and expect too much success. Fortunately, Bradley Bozeman, if you do want to hold on to him, if you do want to develop him, he's only 25 and he still has 4 years remaining. I feel like that's like the 10th time I've said that so far. He has 4 years remaining on his contract, but I mean, I honestly would probably look to go a different direction as soon as I could in terms of the left guard position. And then, the rest of the offensive line, the rest of the interior offensive line, just not great in general in any category really, other than DJ Fluker is solid. Overall, this is honestly probably the best offensive line I've talked about so far in terms of, Cardinals, Falcons, and Ravens so far, this being my third team preview, but still some obvious weaknesses in the interior offensive line. That's something that he's going to want to shore up. As far as the top 3 positives and top 3 negatives go, I mean, anything else would be bearing the lead here. Lamar Jackson is going to be just an absolute force moving forward. He's going to be a handful for us to contain in the AFC. I am shook. I'm going to need to set those QB spies at all times. Someone please remind me to do that the first time I face Baltimore. He's just got, he's just like incredible in all capacities. He's going to be a very good, like, above average passer, if Lucky Chew wants to play him as a pure pocket passer. He's even above average in that regard. And then he's just got, the escape artists, like the X Factor abilities, 96 speed, 96 excel. I've said it all before, but he is just going to be a uniquely dangerous quarterback for us to have to go against. The second positive is they have a young and devable wide receiver core with a true burner, of course, in Marquise Brown. I mentioned to you, other than Willie Snead, they have depth, they have youth and depth at that wide receiver position. You can really dev all 3 of those wide receivers that I mentioned if you really want to go that route, if he wants to go, very pass heavy, if that ends up being the meta in Madden 21, which I hope not, because I'm kind of fucked if it is, not going to lie to you. That's just something that Baltimore can hold on to for the remainder of the cycle, honestly, is that wide receiving core that I mentioned before. And then their tackle play, their left tackle, their right tackle with Ronnie Stanley and Orlando Brown, those are also locked up for the rest of the cycle. Again, youth and just truly elite play at the tackle position, at both tackle positions from the Baltimore Ravens offensive line. I am jealous, and I say this having the Browns roster, which I'm sure a lot of people are going to be jealous of moving forward, given the amount of young talent they have, but I am very jealous of this Baltimore Ravens offense. They are looking like something that can be truly special in the right hands. In terms of top 3 negatives, I kind of mentioned this already. I'm not going to go into all of it again. But again, the interior of the offensive line is not good. It's below average. That's something that, depending on the type of running scheme that Lucky Chu is comfortable with, that's something that he may have to fix pretty quickly, especially that left guard and center positions. It's just not great in any regard there. A lack of explosive running ability. I said earlier, this is obviously other than Lamar Jackson. This is at the halfback position. I said earlier that I think you should dev J.K. Dobbins. I still stand by that. But, when you look at Dobbins and Ingram, who are going to be either the 1-2 or 2-1, depending on what Lucky Chu decides to do, neither of them are particularly speedy. Neither of them have particularly high acceleration stats, They're both, J.K. Dobbins isn't really a power back, but, they're kind of built in the power back mold, sort of, at least year one. Obviously, this is specifically year one. I think J.K. Dobbins can absolutely become an explosive running back in future years. But, right out of the gate heading into season one, they don't really have an explosive halfback that they can consistently rely on. I think Lucky Chu is going to have to go more pass heavy in that regard because Dobbins is not going to be, an MVP candidate by any stretch. And then I'll be honest with y'all, I really stretched for this third negative. This is just a very positive. This is a very strong offense in all capacities. So, sometimes you got to strain for these, I guess, but they don't have any wide receivers with elite route running capabilities. I don't know how important that's going to be in Madden 21. I don't know what the thresholds are. I know there used to be thresholds. I'm not sure if there are thresholds anymore, but regardless, when you look at, Marquise Brown on down, they really don't have very high route running stats specifically. So if Lucky Chu wants to go with a more West Coast approach, that may hinder him, not really being able to create separation. Of course, again, other than Marquise Brown, but the rest of the wide receiving core may not be able to create much separation with their route running ability. But overall, a very strong offense in all capacities with a lot of young talent. I have the Baltimore Ravens running a 3-4. I keep switching between the two. It's gone 3-4, 4-3, 3-4 so far. And this is my projected defensive line. And obviously, it starts with Calais Campbell. And I'm going to talk about the abilities because this is a uniquely versatile quartet of abilities here. I'm thinking specifically of run stuffer and edge threat. Run stuffer is the main, run stopping ability where you get a higher percentage of disengaging from the block and running plays, and then edge threat, of course, the one that was so feared in Madden 20. That's the one that causes you to be able to break the block more quickly in the pass rush. So given the fact that Calais Campbell has both of those, despite the fact that he's 33, despite the fact that he's, I guess, depending on what the regression curve ends up being, probably going to regress pretty quickly, I would hold on to him for at least 3, honestly hold on to him until he retires, because even as the physical stats, even as the rest of his overall attributes diminish, he will still have those abilities, and he will be able to feast as a result. This is one of the best year one pass rushers in the league, only behind, Joey Bosa and company. As far as the rest of the defensive line goes, obviously, Brandon Williams, once again, pretty old. This is an old D-line in general, but Brandon Williams is going to be pretty decent out of the gate. Unfortunately, the 96 strength does drag up his overall, and again, I don't think strength matters in Madden. I would love to be proven wrong, if any of you hear this and I'm just wrong, then please let me know, and I will fix that for moving forward. But at least based on my understanding, strength doesn't matter, so that's kind of dragging his overall up. But he does still have, 91 block shed. You don't just have to worry about Calais Campbell. You have to contain Brandon Williams as well. Of course, 90 play rec as well. He's elite in a couple of categories and then kind of mediocre in the rest. But hey, when one of those is block shedding, you'll take that. As far as Derek Wolfe goes, obviously the weakness on this defensive line, he doesn't really do anything at an elite level, but he's kind of solid all around. He's fine. He's a replacement level left end, but I'm sure the Baltimore Ravens will be happy to use him at least in year one. But look for him, especially with that expiring contract, look for that to be an area where the Ravens can, boost their defense moving forward in team building. These are my projected linebacking starters, and this is without question the worst unit on the Baltimore Ravens. You notice I have Patrick Queen starting as the starting middle linebacker. Of course, he's only 72 overall, but the reason I'm having him do this is he's only a rookie. He can be very easily devved. He has by far the best physical stats of any of the interior linebackers that the Ravens have, 89 speed, 90 acceleration. And I just think, honestly, with a lack of other elite options as far as that Ravens linebacking core goes, and again, take a look if you don't believe me, like there's not a ton of depth there, there's not a ton of skill there. I'm not overlooking anyone here. I think Patrick Queen is the best option, not only to dev moving forward, but I think he will be the best option year one, game one. I think it makes most sense to start Patrick Queen in that middle linebacker position. As far as the rest of the linebacking core goes, I have Matthew Judon. Well, I don't have him. He is the highest overall linebacker in this linebacking core, but even he is like not that great. He's obviously an above average outside linebacker. He has okay, play rec is solid, tackling is solid. He'll be very solid in terms of like a run stopping outside linebacker, but again, it's not elite by any stretch. And then the rest of the linebacking core, not great. I mean, for Fernell McPhee, like that's an area where like I would love to know what Lucky Chi is going to do in this situation, like whether he does end up going 4-3 or whether he, starts someone else. Because like I had Fernell McPhee as the best option to start outside linebacker, but he is like not good either. I mean, I know he's the second highest overall, but when you look at his actual stats, I mean, only 76 speed at that outside linebacker position, that's almost unplayable, especially depending on the type of tight ends you go against. If he goes against like Evan Engram or something like that, or his own Mark Andrews, who knows, in the scout team, then Fernell McPhee is going to have a lot of trouble in pass coverage. So that is, Fernell McPhee is an area where I would look to immediately upgrade. Again, as I said, this is the worst unit, and it's not even close, honestly, on this Baltimore Ravens team. This is where the Ravens are going to have to improve in the team building process. Projected secondary, it's a decently old one, especially when you look at, I don't know. Marcus Peters and Earl Thomas can't really dev them anymore. I guess Marlon Humphrey and Chuck Clark are pretty young. That was kind of a stupid comment. But this is a very solid secondary in all capacities. I mean, you have two different players in the secondary, Marlon Humphrey and Earl Thomas the third, thank you very much, with abilities. Humphrey does have that short route KO and deep route KO. Not a bad duo there. And then Earl Thomas has deep zone KO and Stonewall. So, excuse me, that's going to be interesting to see how Lucky Chu, with the new zone depth abilities that you have like in the coaching options before you start the game. That'll be really interesting to see, how he utilizes Marlon Humphrey, how he utilizes Earl Thomas, and how he chooses to place them depending on his scheme on the field, because obviously you want to get the abilities activated as soon as possible, but you also don't want to distort your defense in like a stupid way where you're just allowing wide open throws. Like you don't need me telling you that. So that'll be interesting to see how he adapts. Marcus Peters still very solid second cornerback there. This team, or this unit, I should say, has solid physical stats all the way around. They're definitely at least Humphrey and Peters are definitely better at zone coverage specifically. Or I'm sorry, I got that flipped around. Humphrey and Peters are better at man coverage, and then Thomas and Clark are better at zone coverage. So, do we see a lot of cover 2 man? Do we see the Alex Gossett model here from Lucky Chu? It's very possible. I don't know. We'll see what he does. But this is a very solid secondary. Obviously, hold on to Marlon Humphrey for as long as possible. You still, I think, hold on to Earl Thomas unless he just completely falls off a cliff in terms of his physical stats, because he does still have those very helpful abilities that you can use. Even Chuck Clark, being the lowest overall guy here by far, I don't think he's someone that you have to look to immediately replace. Like, I think he's going to be a pretty solid strong safety, honestly. So 1 through 4, a pretty solid secondary here for the Baltimore Ravens. As far as their top 3 positives go, again, as I was saying, they have a very strong secondary with both depth and star power. I do not have the next 2 cornerbacks listed, and I'm also forgetting their names, but I apologize. If you don't want to start Humphrey or Peters for whatever reason, the second and third stringers are also very solid. Jimmy Smith is the guy I'm thinking of. Jimmy Smith, who I believe is 75 overall, also has very solid stats all the way around. So they have depth, and of course they have star power in Marlon Humphrey and Earl Thomas. They have a versatile and lethal pass rusher in Calais Campbell. Despite the fact that he's 33 years old, he will, at least year one, be just an absolutely dominant pass rusher, someone that you're going to have to double team pretty much all the time if you're the opposing offensive lineman. I think Calais Campbell is going to be a very, very strong. I think he's going to be a candidate to lead the league in sacks potentially moving forward. So that's good, obviously, for the Ravens to have. And then the third positive is, when you look at Patrick Queen, when you look at Marlon Humphrey, they do have long and cheap contracts for young talent. You'll be able to hold on to, especially Patrick Queen, being the fact that he just got drafted, you're going to be able to hang on to these guys for a long time on a cheap rookie scale. You're going to be able to dev them, and that's something that Lucky Chew is obviously going to look forward to doing moving forward. I think Patrick Queen is especially important here because the linebacking core is pretty trash. Age is obviously a concern. Moving to the negatives, age is obviously a concern at all three levels. A lot of the productive players at all three levels of the offense, a lot of the productive players at all three levels of the defense are on the wrong side of 30. Of course, some of them have superstar devs, so who knows how quickly they'll regress, but you can expect the rest of them to regress very quickly, so that's something that Lucky Chew is going to have to be aware of. The high overalls, like the beautiful stats, aren't going to last forever for a lot of these players, so he's going to have to tinker with the defense pretty quickly, I think, more so than the offense, at least because the offense just has a lot of young talent in general. This is really their biggest negative in terms of year one specifically. Again, the linebacking core is generally weak. Something I forgot to mention when I was talking about them is that they struggle especially in pass coverage. I believe, if I'm remembering this correctly, the highest zone coverage anyone has in that linebacking core is like 66 or 67, something like that. It's in the mid to high 60s for sure. So that is worrying, especially if passing ends up being the meta, especially if Cody Youngson is cooking up those hot dots in the middle of the field. That may be something that he struggles to contain. And with Usering being potentially dead, it's not like he can have Patrick Queen, shutting down half the field to help him out there. So that is a concern, of course, for this Baltimore Ravens team. The third concern is this the Brandon Williams contract is something like 5 years, $55 million, I think. That is truly ugly. He's going to regress pretty quickly given that he does not have superstar development, and he is someone you're going to have to look to. I would honestly immediately trade him. I would just get that shit off my hands, honestly. Just have that be someone else's problem, that contract. But regardless, if you do want to keep him, then that's going to have to be something he figures out moving forward, because that's going to take up a pretty significant percentage of his cap hit for a player that's probably not going to be usable after year two, honestly. That's the biggest negative moving forward for this Baltimore Ravens roster. In terms of cap space and expiring contracts, first off, again, for the third straight time, we have a team here that does not have much cap space. They only have $7,357,000 approximately. That is not particularly good. That's, again, in the bottom 10 of the league. This is, once again, the third straight team we've talked about that is in the bottom 10 of the league in terms of remaining cap space. Here is the first player that I'm giving a high priority in terms of re-signing. I do think, despite the fact that Matthew Judon is not an elite linebacker in any capacity, I do think, especially based on how the draft class is looking, especially based on, I don't think there's going to be anyone really usable coming out of free agency in season one. There almost never is. People usually re-sign everyone, re-sign most of their, good expiring players. So I think Judon is going to be pretty critical for him to hold on to. There is no linebacking depth, especially if he decides to run a 3-4. He's going to have to hold on to Judon. Again, despite the fact that he's not the best linebacker in the world, I do think that is going to be a pretty critical re-signing for him. Luckily, Judon shouldn't ask for too much money. I do think that'll be manageable from Lucky Chew's perspective, and he is, in my opinion, a high priority player to hold on to. In terms of medium priority, we begin with Matt Skora. He is the lowest overall player on the offensive line, but he's also the only center they have as far as I'm aware of, and the interior of the offensive line isn't great in general. So, if you do need him for another year, you can sign him into a short-term deal and then hold on to him. I wouldn't be flabbergasted if he ends up letting Matt Skora go, especially based on how he performed season one, but that's potentially a medium priority re-signing for Lucky Chew, depending on how he chooses to team build otherwise. Of course, Derek Wolfe, he is the worst player on the defensive line by default, but he's still very, very solid. Still, a player that you can hold on to for at least another 2 or 3 years after the first season, that can give you, solid pass rushing abilities. So he's a medium priority in my opinion. I'd almost have like Score and Wolf on different tiers, but I only gave myself 3, so I'm kind of, putting myself in a box there. And then in terms of low priority guys, Willie Snead, I don't think you'll need to re-sign just because you have, again, 3 young wide receivers that have the potential to be elite. And of course, Marquise Brown already is elite. And then Fernell McPhee, he is trash. I hope for the Ravens' sake that they don't end up having to re-sign him, because he is going to be not effective in Madden, I don't think. But again, if you're truly, truly desperate and there are truly no other options, that is someone that the Ravens could potentially re-sign. This is their overall season projection as far as I'm concerned. Again, remember that the team that is highlighted in their team colors, the team I have winning. Just to walk you through, this is going to be kind of a new thing here. I broke it down to 5 categories: the sure wins, the likely wins, the toss-ups, the likely losses, and the sure losses. I won't read all of them. Like, you can kind of, read that for yourself. But in terms of the divisional dynamics, excuse me, I don't think there's a chance in hell that Lucky Chew beats Cody either time, so I'm not going to talk about that. As far as like myself and Jesse goes, I think I have been a lot more volatile in the last couple cycles than Jesse is in terms of like losing a lot of stupid games. So like, I'm not necessarily sure if I'm a worse user than Jesse. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm deluding myself. I don't know. But I'm not necessarily sure if I'm like a worse user per se. But I do absolutely have the capacity to just like, lay an egg against this Baltimore team and lose, I think, than Pittsburgh does, than Jesse's Pittsburgh Steelers do. So because of that, I had myself as a toss-up and Pittsburgh as a likely loss. Overall, whenever I have like divisional splits and stuff like that, I'll usually just give the home team the win both times. It's purely arbitrary. I don't think home field advantage really does anything in Madden, but it's just, it's better than nothing. It's a way for me to show, who I think is going to win each game. So like, for example, here with Cleveland, I have the home team Baltimore winning week 1, and then I have myself winning week 14, just the home team both times. And then this is the overall record I think Lucky Chew will end up with. I think he will go 7-9 and 1-5 in the division. I forgot to mention, I do, if I had to put my life on it, I do think Jesse will sweep him, although I'm not going to put my life on anything in that regard. I have them starting 3-1, of course. I have them again beating me, and then they have games against Chapter Roll and Cook that I think they're gonna, pretty easily win both of. But despite that, I have them starting 4-2 for that matter now that I look at it. But despite that, I think it's going to be, a pretty ugly ending to the season. As far as their toss-up games go, I had Jacksonville beating them, and I had them beating the New York Giants. Just in terms of like, if I had to give them one of them, I think they're probably more likely to win that New York Giants game. But who knows? I mean, those are potentially games that Lucky Chew could, win both of or lose both of. And, depending on how those two games go, that probably indicates how the rest of the season is going for Lucky Chew. But I have them going 7-9. It's going to be a tough division. Jesse, myself, and Lucky Chew are all going to be hovering around that, 9-7 to 7-9 range, I project. And then Cody's just going to feast. So obviously 7-9 will not be enough to win the division. Shout out to the 2010 Seattle Seahawks. Here is my threat level scale. Once again, I'm not going to go into the specifics because you've heard this twice already, but I love the scale and I'm keeping it. Fuck all of you. And my placement for Lucky Chew is a solid 5. I think he is the textbook definition of an any given Sunday user. I've seen him pull off plenty of upset wins against, competition that you would think is better on its face, but I've also seen him just lay eggs time after time again. There's a reason he's not a consistent playoff contender, is because he does tend to lay eggs in, under the dimmest of lights, I guess, if you will. So I'm sure, I had the schedule projection based on like what I thought were kind of, the obvious predictions, but who knows, he may get it together and beat Cody once, and he might, lose to Taint. You never know. These are the things that Lucky Chew does season in and season out, and I have him as a textbook, again, a clear and obvious any given Sunday user. Will he? I don't think he'll make the playoffs this season. Will he make the playoffs at some point in the cycle? I would be kind of surprised if he did, honestly, given how deep the AFC is and how, of course, Cody's going to stay with his Bengals the entire time. His favorite team, his hometown team. But it wouldn't like blow me away if he, with the right combination of an easy schedule and like, let's say he gets hot, it wouldn't blow me away if he, snuck in there as a 7 seed at one point. I've seen more improbable things happen for sure. Shout out to Justin's 2 Super Bowl runs. So it wouldn't shock me in any regard, but Lucky Chew, a textbook any given Sunday user, in my opinion. Once again, that will do it for this episode of the Better League Madden 21 team previews. Thank you all for joining me on these. I think they're getting better and better each time. Again, please let me know if you have anything you want me to add, if you have anything you want me to get rid of in terms of the segments, in terms of, what I should be focusing on, what I should be talking about. Please let me know. But thank you all again for listening to the third of 32 teams in this Madden 21 Better League preview. I am your humble host, Connor Rice,